This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I told you this thing causes pre-hepatic, hepatic, and post-hepatic causes for portal hypertension, and greater than 7 mmHg, so 8, 10 mmHg and all. It can go up till 20 also, 20 mmHg, and there will be depending upon the rise in the pressure of the portal vein, the manifestations will occur. So in 4 manifestations. So next time I ask anybody, you should be able to answer this. Okay, in what ways the portal hypertension can manifest? So first is GI bleed. Note down. Number 1 is GI bleed, gastrointestinal bleeding. So that is one. So then second is splenomegaly. Third is ascites. Then fourth is encephalopathy and hepatic encephalopathy. So once again I'll repeat. Number 1 is GI bleeding. Number 2 is splenomegaly. Number 3 is what? Ascites. Number 4. Number 4 is
Encephalopathy.
encephalopathy. Okay. These are the, so please remember, these are the 4 major manifestations of portal hypertension. Then you can also have syndromes like hepatorenal syndrome. You can take this as 5. Then hepatopulmonary syndrome. So these are minor manifestations. So 4 major manifestations of in what ways the portal hypertension patient will present is these 4: GI bleed, second splenomegaly, third ascites, then fourth
Encephalopathy.
okay, hepatic encephalopathy. We'll start with GI bleed. So how to tackle? So whenever there is increase in portal pressure, so as the portal pressure rises beyond 10 and going up to 12, and it can go up to 20 also. So as the portal pressure rises, all these portosystemic collaterals will open up. So there will be a dilatation of these veins leading to varices. You all know the portosystemic this thing sites. One is lower end of the esophagus. Second in the rectum. Then third is retroperitoneum. Then bare area of liver. Then surrounding the umbilicus, that is caput medusae. So these are all the portosystemic. These are all the sites where the portosystemic connections are there. So which site, which vein is connecting to which systemic vein is connecting to which which portal vein is connecting to which systemic vein, you please know, read up. Okay. Mostly bleeding commonly of all of these, mostly lower end of esophagus. That's where you will find esophageal varices. So this left gastric vein will develop varices. So this is also known as lower end of esophageal left gastric vein is known as what? Coronary vein. So you please remember this. So lower end of esophagus, you will have esophageal varices, and then you can grade the varices depending upon how much confluence they are occupying. So different gradings are there. So as they become grade 1 to grade 4, so grade 4, the varices will occupy the whole confluence of the esophagus. So then the upper when they rupture, then the bleeding starts. I already told you. So this GI bleed is one of the major manifestations of portal hypertension. GI bleed. So mostly from the lower end of the esophagus, esophageal varices. So I already told you, in any acute situation, the resuscitation procedure is the same. If they ask esophageal varices and portal hypertension, again, I told you the airway, breathing, circulation, disability, exposure, so all same in that way. So when a patient comes, lands up in casualty, then first you will ask, is it hematemesis or hemoptysis? Ask clearly, hematemesis or hemoptysis. So when the patient tells hematemesis, then uh, or if the patient is in little unconscious state, just ask that attenders, is the blood coming with vomitus or with the cough, like that? Then immediately you have to resuscitate, check the airway, patient is unconscious, intubate, then breathing, check whether the air entry is equally, then if not, you connect to the ventilator, then circulation, replace the lost volume with the cross match blood. Until then you can use plasma expanders or crystalloids. So all of this resuscitation is number 1. Okay, is the primary. Resuscitate the patient, and patient should not be in shock. See to that appropriate fluids are given, and then patient's vital signs are stable. So there is no tachycardia, no hypotension. Patient is stable now. Once the patient is stable, treatment is, I told you while telling upper GI bleed, treatment is early endoscopy. Early immediate endoscopy, or early means as soon as possible. So endoscopy, suppose today is working day, Friday, maybe weekends the endoscopy endoscopy suites are shut down, so you have to put a Sengstaken Blakemore tube or something. Or so now if endoscopy is there, immediate endoscopy, then what? Please remember, note down this point, with sclerotherapy and banding. Sclerotherapy and banding, there is greater than 90% control of the bleed. So immediate early endoscopy with sclerotherapy or banding. Mostly banding is preferred. So bands are applied to the varices. So then there is immediate control of hematemesis. So greater than 90%. So this is life saving. Okay. As the disease process is still not corrected, there is chance for rebleed rates are there. That and all will worry later. Right now the bleeding is controlled and patient vital signs are stable. So please everybody note down, early endoscopy, that means as soon as possible. First is you make sure patient A, B, C, D, E, all this patient vital signs are stable, then shift the patient to the endoscopy procedure room, then endoscopy, either sclerotherapy or banding. Sclerotherapy, you inject the sclerosant, ethanol amine oleate. Commercial name is ethoxysclerol. So, but ethanol amine oleate, please note down, ethanol amine oleate injected intravariceally into the varix, you inject. or paravaricially. Okay. And there are guidelines, maximum how much sclerosant and how many injections. Like the same for banding. How many bands? See that band at the is passed. Banding is done through the upper GI scope. So you pass the device. So at the end there is negative suction. So this this band will go and occlude the esophageal varus. Esophageal varus, it will occlude. So sclerotherapy and banding. Banding is slightly superior to sclerotherapy. So with that we'll have immediate control over the GI bleed. So this is how you will control the esophageal varices. So then check for fundal varices. Pass the endoscope, go to the fundus of the stomach. There will be dilated veins there. So fundal varices, you don't do sclerotherapy. Please remember, no sclerotherapy for fundal varices. If you pierce, then the chances are there you'll perforate the stomach. So a glue is applied. What glue? What type of glue? Cyanoacrylate. Cyanoacrylate is a type of glue. So this will, you can either spray it through the endoscope. This cyanoacrylate glue is sprayed over the fundal varices. So yeah, I see. So there is so much noise there. Please mute. Okay. Mute yourself. I see so much. Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me? Class rep Pawan?
Yes,
Okay. There's some disturbance. If anybody is not muted yourself, please mute
yes,
yourself.
sir.
What is some noise I can hear? Okay. So control of the GI bleed is done mostly through sclerotherapy and banding. So suppose the patient does not present with patient sometimes will have no hematemesis.
Yes.
No hematemesis. That does not mean that patient is not bleeding. Ask for history of melena. Melena will be there. Even though he may not vomit and there is no hematemesis, there will still be bleeding. So most common cause for lower GI bleed is upper GI bleed only. From the upper GI, it is going to the lower. So ask, and by the time it comes out, it won't be frank blood. So it will be melena only. So both hematemesis and melena indicate upper GI bleed. Ask for history of melena, even if it is there. Or even though patient has not bled yet, but you have made out on ultrasound and all, there are signs of portal hypertension, then you do endoscopy, then you will see the varices, then you can do banding even before they start bleeding. Even before they start to bleed, you can apply the bands and gain control so that patient does not bleed. So upper GI bleed, I told you, esophageal varices, and for fundal varices, you apply the cyanoacrylate glue, just like this glue. But this is that type of glue we won't apply. It is made up of cyanoacrylate. Look up the spelling, cyanoacrylate glue. So you spray, then the bleeding from the fundal varices will stop. Suppose I told you, suppose we don't have, today is weekend and endoscopy procedure rooms are closed. So then what will you do? How will you stop? Put in Sengstaken Blakemore tube. putting Seng's taken. I already told you in upper GI bleed class. Seng's taken Blakemore tube. Put it inside. It has two balloons. Esophageal balloon and fundal gastric balloon. First is you inflate the gastric balloon, then pull. There will be traction. So once the gastric balloon is inflated, there will be traction. So then you inflate the esophageal balloon. Then check whether the balloons are there in place or not. Okay. Then this will compress. This will stop the bleeding temporarily, maximum 24 hours. So after that you have to remove it, otherwise esophageal necrosis will occur. So meanwhile you still have time, right? You put in this tube, okay, and call the endoscopy surgical gastroenterologist. Call him. Early endoscopy you do, and then control the bleeding. So if it is not, facilities are not available, you have to shift the patient to wherever endoscopy facilities are there for banding and sclerotherapy. So temporary control in the emergency room, when these endoscopy procedures are not there. Balloon tamponade. This is called balloon tamponade. Seng's taken Blakemore tube. It has 4 lumens. It has 2 for inflating the gastric balloon and esophageal balloon. The other 2 for aspiration. Just aspirate whatever the contents are coming. So other 2 for aspiration of the contents. So that's for inflation of the balloons. So it's about Seng's taken Blakemore tube. So check up the spelling. Seng's taken Blakemore tube. The other modification is Minnesota tube and all that. So just Blakemore tube or balloon tamponade. Remember Seng's tamponade. Balloon tamponade is done temporarily until the endoscopy facilities are available. So that is how the GI bleed is controlled. GI bleed is controlled. Okay. Then later we'll go for tips and finally liver transplant and all that. Those are the final treatments. But these are only the temporary processes until you can stop. You can do banding and sclerotherapy, but again few months later, as the disease has not stopped, cirrhosis, underlying cirrhosis, so again the esophageal varices can occur and chances of rebleed is there again. So but temporarily greater than 90% is control is achieved to stop the bleeding. So these are life-saving procedures: endoscopy, banding and sclerotherapy. Okay. I told you, if it is not there, put in a Seng's taken Blakemore tube and shift to the place where you can do early endoscopy and banding. So, next we'll go to splenomegaly. So mostly in cirrhotic patients, liver hepatomegaly, 3 types. Fatty liver is the initial one. Then the other types, macronodular cirrhosis, micronodular cirrhosis. Liver sometimes may be shrunken, and if there is gross ascites, then liver may not be palpable, but spleen will be palpable. Okay. When is spleen palpable? When it is enlarged twice its size, twice its normal size. When spleen is enlarged, spleen becomes palpable. So splenomegaly, sometimes there will be what is portal vein? Splenic vein joins the superior mesenteric vein to form the portal vein. So spleen is on the left side. Sometimes there could be isolated left-sided portal hypertension. So note down, please note down, this is called sinistral, SI, and sinistral hypertension, or call it left-sided portal hypertension. So in this left-sided portal hypertension, only manifestation will be splenomegaly. There may not be ascites, there may not be that much of cirrhosis of the liver. So most prominent thing will be splenomegaly. The spleen is hugely enlarged. When do you call it hypersplenism? When do you call a spleen hypersplenism? I will tell you. Please note down.
When there is a hematological disorder like hemolysis.
Yes, splenomegaly with pancytopenia, hematological disorders, but cytopenia. So there is reduction in all the three: RBC, white cells, and platelets. So pancytopenia is there. So pancytopenia with enlargement of the spleen. So that is hypersplenism. So that type of this thing will warrant. We have to do. Splenectomy is done. Just like we'll deal. Splenectomy has been discussed. Splenectomy has been discussed or not? That is entirely different chapter.
No, sir.
If it has not been discussed, we will discuss it in separate class. Students, did they discuss splenectomy?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, we'll discuss it. We will discuss it in another class. So 3 weeks before an elective splenectomy, vaccines have to be given against pneumococcal, to prevent meningitis and pneumonia and all these things, meningococcal. So against capsulated, vaccines have to be given. So all that procedures, and for left-sided portal hypertension. So that is, this side, left side, which will present mostly with splenomegaly and hypersplenism. So treatment is splenectomy. So we will discuss splenectomy and spleen in another class. So that is splenomegaly. So we have dealt with, that is the second one. So third is what? Ascites. So there are various theories, just read these theories: overflow theory and overflow hypothesis and underfilling hypothesis. It is all basically, hypoproteinemia, then reduced oncotic pressure and all these things, then ascites will develop. So read about those hypotheses and theories, but manifestations, okay, ascites, there is ascitic fluid in the abdomen. These clinical tests. So less than 500 ml, you do Poodle sign. So 1.5 liter, you do, what is this? Percussion fluid. When it is grossly 3 liters are there, then you do fluid thrill. Otherwise 1.5 to 2 liters, what do you do? Shifting dullness. Yes, shifting dullness. When there is gross enlargement of the abdomen, then you do what is this? Fluid thrill. So okay, then how is ascites management? You write about the medical management first. Medical management. That is, you cut down the sodium intake to less. Minimum is 1 gram of what per day, less than 2 grams like this. So cut the salt intake, then use these drugs, diuretics you use, diuretics, spironolactone you use, then loop diuretics like furosemide you can use, but with furosemide you will have loss of potassium. So potassium sparing diuretics, or in combination with spironolactone and what is this? Combination of diuretics, both furosemide and spironolactone, all these drugs can be used to decrease the ascites. And the procedures to remove the ascitic fluid is called large volume paracentesis. That is the procedure by which you remove the ascitic fluid. So you insert, you insert a IV cannula, I mean not IV, you insert a cannula with a needle. You should take care, you should not pierce the inferior epigastric artery. So the correct point you choose and insert the needle, then drain the ascitic fluid slowly. Suppose massive ascites is there, 3 liters, 5 liters. So it is not as if half an hour later you come back from rounds, then the fluid 2 liters is drained. It is not like that. Slowly the fluid is drained. So large fluctuations if you do, then the patient can go in for shock. So that is avoided. Slowly you drain, over a period of say 2 to 3 hours, then slowly 1.5 liters or 2 liters of ascitic fluid is drained. So this is called paracentesis. Then once the fluid is drained, then you have to infuse, write down management of ascites. First I told you medical management, cut down salt intake, then the diuretics, all that medical management. Then second is paracentesis. You drain the ascitic fluid, followed by albumin infusion. Give albumin. So either 1 unit or 2 units, but albumin is expensive. Not everybody can afford it. Some each vial costs 4,000 to 6,000 or depending commercially. So not everybody can afford albumin. So minimum, if you cannot give albumin, you give at least amino acid infusion, amino acid or FFP, fresh frozen plasma. Okay, either amino acid infusion or FFP you give. So ideally after paracentesis you have to give albumin infusion. Okay, so then there are people believe this ascitic fluid can be put back into the veins itself within the person. So there are, this is the third one. So first is medical management, then second one is paracentesis, third one is peritoneovenous shunts. There are shunts where you can place from the peritoneal cavity into one of the large veins. Internal jugular vein or into any of these cava. So mostly veins. So peritoneovenous shunts. So L-E-V-E-N, leave-in shunt. I should have bought some paper. Leave-in. Then next is Denver, D-E-N-V-E-R. So this leave-in and Denver are two types of peritoneal shunts where you can shunt the ascitic fluid from peritoneal cavity into the systemic veins. So, and some of them also have this leave-in has valve, and this Denver shunt has one pumping mechanism, so that slowly from peritoneal cavity the ascitic fluid is goes into the systemic veins. So there are many shunts are there, but leave-in and Denver, DNVR, these two are common shunts. But shunts also you have possibility. Suppose the ascitic fluid is infected, then there are chances that bacteria fluid, infected ascitic fluid with bacteria is directly entering into the systemic veins. So that is one of the complications or disadvantages. So with these shunts, or nowadays mostly we are relying on to control GI bleed, ascites and all. We are relying on a procedure called TIPS, TIPS. What it is, I will tell you shortly. Okay, so leave-in and Denver shunts. Okay, peritoneovenous shunts from peritoneal cavity into the systemic veins. So management of ascites, I told you. Management of ascites, I told you. So fourth is what? What is the fourth manifestation that you can? Encephalopathy. So why does encephalopathy occur? Please remember this. I want you to all to go back and read see before the liver chapter.
Sir, not audible, sir.
Of vitamin K dependent factors, then the storage of proteins, all this. So detoxification is one of the main functions of the liver. So it removes the toxins from the blood. So mostly two routes, right? Renal and hepatic. That is how the drugs are cleared. So once the liver is diseased, then all these toxins and okay, ammonia accumulates within the body. Please remember, ammonia is the degradation product, from the urea, and ammonia has to be removed. So accumulation of ammonia leads to hepatic encephalopathy. So conservative procedures are what? Conservative procedures of managing encephalopathy is what? Please note down. That is, they say we have to limit the protein intake. Protein intake we have to limit, and thereby nitrogen load and all will decrease, and ammonia formation also will decrease. So, but please remember this is a catabolic state and demand for protein is much higher. So we cannot deprive the patient of proteins.
Sir, not audible, sir.
Simplest form of amino acids. No, simplest form of amino acids. So not much of nitrogen accumulation, leading to ammonia formation and all will occur. So branched chain amino acids are given. So amino acids in their simplest form is given, not as a bulk protein. So remember, so this is a catabolic state. We have to give proteins in their simplest form, that is amino acids. So amino acids preparations are given. So then what are the other measures? They tell reduce the bacteria in the gut. So previously neomycin used to be used. You can still write neomycin, but they found that neomycin is toxic to the gut. So now erythromycin is being given, or metronidazole. Erythromycin and metronidazole you can write to decrease the bacteria in the gut, and gut has to be clean. So the gut intestines have to be clean. How do you clean the gut? So every
Sir, not audible, sir.
all this will lead to increase of ammonia in the blood again. So what is it? Can you hear me?
Sir,
Can
in
you
Sir,
hear
between
actually
me?
it is not audible, sir.
What?
In between, we couldn't hear anything, sir.
Where in between means what?
Sir, from erythromycin, gut clearance.
Okay, clearing of the gut. Okay, I'll tell you. Peritoneovenous shunts you have heard now.
yes, sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
peritoneovenous shunts you
from
have told.
hepatic
Okay.
encephalopathy.
Yeah, conservative management of hepatic amino acids are not given, protein is not given in it's in as bulk protein. So simplest form of proteins, that is branched amino acids are given. So you cannot cut off the patient by not giving protein, because this is a catabolic state. This is a catabolic state. So there is more need for protein actually. So see what happens if you keep on giving just protein product. So then again it will increase the blood ammonia, nitrogen will increase, and that simplest form of protein in form of amino acids is given. Okay, that is number one. Then next, to keep the gut clean, previously neomycin was given. Now they found that neomycin is enterotoxin. So what we are giving nowadays is erythromycin or metronidazole. Metronidazole is fine. You can write metronidazole or decrease the bacterial content in the gut. And then gut has to be kept clean. So if there is fecal matter in the gut, then again ammonia will rise. Ammonia will rise. So how do you clear the gut? How do you clear the gut of fecal matter? So laxatives you can give, but not all. So in this type of hepatic encephalopathy, safer or safest laxative is what? I told you just now. So safest laxative is lactulose. Lactulose. So what happens is this will clean the gut, remove all the fecal matter, and it won't alter the intestinal pH. Intestinal pH is not altered, and minimal damage is done, and all this fecal matter, residual fecal matter, everything is removed from the gut. Conscious through the Ryle's tube. It is given every 6th hourly to keep the gut clean. To keep the gut clean. Every 6th hourly you give lactulose. That is almost 4 times a day, and keep the gut clean. So meanwhile this ammonia, I told you ammonia is the main byproduct which accumulates whenever liver is diseased. Ammonia accumulates, and then it causes the encephalopathy. So hepatic encephalopathy is characterized by what? You are able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, hepatic encephalopathy is characterized by encephalopathy states. So 1 to 4. 4 is almost comatose. 4 is comatose. Then first is obtundation, mental obtundation. Then second is confusion. Then third is almost like stupor. Then fourth is comatose. So that is the grades of hepatic encephalopathy, and finally the patient becomes comatose. So, and these grades of hepatic encephalopathy with flapping tremor will be there. This is not resting tremor. This is called liver flaps or flapping tremor. So flapping tremor with altered mental status. Flapping tremor with altered mental status is a condition that will tell you that patient is in hepatic encephalopathy. So the culprit is ammonia, accumulation of ammonia in the blood. So I'm writing down a drug name. So this drug, please note down this or take a snapshot and look it up. You can see it clearly. It is called L-ornithine L-aspartate. L-ornithine L-ornithine. Ornithine L, the whole thing is one drug only. L-aspartate. Have you taken down?
Yes, sir.
Have you taken down?
Yes, sir.
Once more, I'm L-ornithine L-aspartate. So to give this drug, this will remove ammonia from. So certain physicians are of the opinion that this drug won't work, but we have personally used it, and we have seen hepatic encephalopathy, almost grade 3 or grade 4 patient, almost stupor and unconscious patient, becoming very alert the next day because the blood ammonia levels have come down when they've given these drugs. Like 2 ampules you can give, same 2 ampules you can give every 6th hourly. 2 ampules you can give every 6th hourly, that is almost 4 times a day. This will remove uh, the ammonia from the blood, and patient will become more but underlying disease you have to correct. So I have still few more minutes, so I'll tell you about the other procedures. So you can give L-ornithine, L-aspartate, L-ornithine, L-aspartate. It is not 2 drugs, it is 1 drug. The commercial name is Hapamers. It is also available for some fluid, and then give uh, you can give the drug same every 6th hourly you can give. So patient is unconscious, use the IV drug, and 2 ampules you can give every 6th hourly. So this drug will remove the ammonia from the body, and hepatic encephalopathy is reduced. So there now we'll go to there is a procedure called TIPS. There is a procedure called TIPS, that is called transjugular intravenous transjugular intrahepatic portovenous shunt. All of you have taken down. Transjugular means through the jugular. So transjugular intrahepatic portovenous shunt. So this is called TIPS. Mostly, under radiologists will do this. So this will correct what? This will correct most of the, it will stop the GI bleed. It will stop the progression of ascites, but sometimes encephalopathy it can exacerbate, and encephalopathy it can get worsened. How? I'll tell you. So you cannulate one of these veins, internal jugular vein, right, internal jugular vein you cannulate, then pass it through the cava and all. It will go into the substance, into the portal vein. So it will go into the portal vein. So once it goes into the portal vein, then through the substance of parenchyma, vein. So it will go. So we are not using groin axis because groin is more, tends to get dirty. So you can through the jugular axis. So transjugular intrahepatic portovenous shunt. So it will go to the portal vein through the hepatic parenchyma, into the hepatic vein. have cannulated, then you will pass over the cannula, you will pass a guide wire. Then over that you will pass a dilator. Then finally you will pass a stent. That this stent will connect the portal vein through the substance of liver into the hepatic vein. So which is the high pressure area? Which is the high pressure area? Students, this is common sense. We are talking portal hypertension. So portal is the high pressure area. Portal, it will get decompressed. So as soon as the shunt opens, so the high pressure will go into the low pressure. That metabolites are still there in the blood. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this connection is getting on and off. The toxic
Sir, not audible, sir.
Ah, 11:30 kada. Still there is time. Okay. So this is called tips. Please, this can be asked as short notes. So please remember, transjugular intrahepatic portovenous shunt. So once you cannulate, then you pass a guide wire, then you dilate the tract using a dilator, then the shunt is placed. The shunt is placed between the high pressure portal vein, liver parenchyma to what? To the hepatic vein. So then the portal hypertension is relieved. So this tips will reduce. Tips can reduce, reduce the portal hypertension. Thereby, variceal bleeding will be reduced. Formation of ascites will be reduced. But only disadvantage is hepatic encephalopathy can occur because liver is still not functioning. Liver is still not functioning, and we can, hepatic toxic metabolites are still there in the blood, and they'll go into systemic circulation. So only disadvantage is hepatic encephalopathy can worsen. That you remember. But TIPS is a very useful procedure. It is also one of the life-saving procedure. And final answer to this portal hypertension is the orthotopic liver transplant. Finally, end stage liver disease means, okay, then we have to go for liver transplant. So liver transplant. So TIPS is often used as a bridge to buy time, bridge between until the liver transplantation occurs. So until you get a donor, or until you, so to buy time. So it is not it is not like you can leave that shunt permanently lifelong, and that is the treatment. That is not the treatment. Okay, this is a procedure done. This will control hematemesis, or this will control the GI bleed. This will control the GI bleed. This will control the ascites, and this will relieve the portal hypertension. So until you find a definite solution like liver transplant. So this is often called bridge to liver transplant. So until then you can gain time. Meanwhile you can look for a suitable donor, matching HLA match and all that. So and before that, I will just tell about a procedure. to control GA bleed. Previously, when the patient was stable, they used to do, GA bleed. I told you. Nowadays, modern days, we are using endoscopy and banding. Previously, they used to do a procedure called devascularization. So dilated veins in the lower end of esophagus and at the GE junction, all of them are transected. All of them are transected. So how do you transect? You can do a gastrotomy. You can make a hole in the stomach and pass a stapler, cutting and stapling device. You can pass it upwards, lower end of the esophagus. There is a landmark in inferior pulmonary vein. So all the dilated veins in the lower end of esophagus and at the GE junction, all of them are transected. So this procedure, devascularization procedure, so many are there, but you please remember this procedure. It is called Sigura. SUGUIRA. So there are many devascularization procedures, Hassab's procedure and all, but you just remember Sigura. Even now, devascularization procedures we are not doing, nobody is procedures because patient is unstable and now newer methods are there. So many newer endoscopy methods are there to control bleeding. So devascularization is abandoned. But just know, in case somebody asks what is devascularization procedure, what is Sigura? Sigura's procedure means that transection of, you just cut all that lower, transect the lower esophageal veins at the GE junction, and at the same time 4 steps are there. So as soon as you do that type of transection, automatically vagus is also cut. So vagotomy is done. So where vagus is gone, then fundoplication is done. So fundoplication is done. So, and splenectomy is also sometimes combined. So open procedure, if you are doing, number 1, transection of veins at the lower end of esophagus and GE junction, stomach, transection of those veins, splenectomy, vagotomy, fundoplications. So four parts. So these 4 points, this forms Sigura's procedures. Just remember this, one of the devascularization procedure. But you can mention devascularization procedures are no longer being done, or because of the availability of modern endoscopic procedures. So it is almost time for next class. So I told you, so final treatment is orthotopic liver transplant. Orthotopic liver transplant. So till by the time tips can be used. So tips can manage bleed, ascites, GA bleed, ascites, and only thing is disadvantages and encephalopathy. So 4 major manifestations. These 4 manifest portal hypertension. So how does it present? Means most commonly these 4 only. What? Number 1, GI bleed. Number 2, splenomegaly. Number 3 is what? Ascites. Number 5 is encephalopathy. So hepatorenal, hepatopulmonary are due to other I'll tell you in next class later. So those are minor symptoms. So due to the diseased liver process, there is deterioration in the renal function. So multiple theories are there. Deposition of this bilirubin or formation of new arteriovenous channels. So all that gradually renal function starts to deteriorate. Same way pulmonary function also, but those are minor syndromes. Hepatorenal syndrome, hepatopulmonary syndrome, just go through. But the four major manifestations I told you: GI bleed, splenomegaly, ascites, and cephalopathy. And management of each syndrome, I mean each manifestation, how to manage it, I told you. So this is about it. So, and devascularization procedure also I just mentioned. So we'll meet in the next class. Class rep, you please give the attendance. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Any doubts, feel free to contact me. Feel free to ask me. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, sir.
Thank you. Sir, అయిపోయింది. Next class రమ్మని.